Lady, you are here only to cook. The towering cowboy growled at the quiet woman whose sleeves hid dark bruises, his words cutting through the Montana winter air like a blade. The townspeople whispered she was just another drifter, a colored woman seeking shelter before the storms claimed her. They expected her to fade into obscurity, forgotten by spring thaw. But the bitter rancher who hired her out of desperation would soon discover that beneath her humble facade lay knowledge that could save lives, or destroy them both. For while she transformed his crumbling ranch with gentle hands, dangerous men from her past were already asking questions in town, hunting the educated woman whose very existence challenged everything this harsh frontier believed possible. When her secret finally surfaced, would it bring salvation or catastrophe to them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The winter wind cut through Cedar Ridge like a knife, carrying whispers of another brutal storm. Esther Williams clutched her worn bundle tighter as she walked down the muddy main street. Her boots leaked. Her stomach ached from hunger. The first establishment turned her away with a silent headshake. The second didn't even open the door. At Miller's General Store, the proprietor looked through her as if she were invisible. "We don't hire your kind," he said flatly. Esther nodded and moved on. 3 years of running had taught her not to argue. The bruises on her arms, hidden beneath her threadbare sleeves, served as constant reminders of what happened when she fought back. The saloon keeper laughed when she asked for work. The boarding house owner shut the door in her face. By afternoon, desperation clawed at her chest. The storm clouds gathering overhead promised death for anyone caught outside tonight. At the edge of town, a weathered sign pointed toward Montana Ranch. Esther had no choice left. The ranch buildings looked ready to collapse. Broken fences stretched across dead grass. Cattle huddled together against the cold, their ribs showing through patchy coats. The main house needed paint and new shutters. Clint Montana emerged from the barn, his face hard as granite. Years of loss had carved deep lines around his eyes. He moved with the careful efficiency of a man who trusted nothing and no one. "What do you want?" His voice carried the bite of winter. "Work, sir. I can cook and clean." He studied her with cold blue eyes. His last cook had abandoned him 2 weeks ago, claiming the isolation drove her mad. The house had become a disaster since then. Dirty dishes piled high. Dust covered every surface. "Can't pay much." "I don't need much. Rooms in the barn storage, meals twice a day. You do exactly what I tell you and nothing more." He paused, his gaze taking in her worn dress and careful posture. "Lady, you are here only to cook. Don't get any ideas about anything else." Esther felt the familiar sting of dismissal. She pushed it down deep, where all the other hurts lived. "Yes, sir." The storage room was barely large enough for a cot and wash basin. Mice droppings scattered the floor. The single window was cracked, but it had walls and a roof. It would keep her alive through winter. That evening, she surveyed the kitchen disaster. Months of neglect had turned it into chaos. Moldy food rotted in corners. Grease coated the stove. The smell made her eyes water. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing purple bruises that had faded to yellow around the edges. Old injuries from her last encounter with bounty hunters in Colorado. The memory made her hands shake. Clint appeared in the doorway as she scrubbed the counters. "There's beans in the pantry. Make something edible." She found beans, flour, and a few sorry vegetables. Within an hour, she had transformed them into a hearty stew that filled the house with warmth. Clint ate in silence, but she noticed he finished every bite. Days blended into routine. She woke before dawn to start coffee and breakfast. She cleaned rooms that hadn't seen proper care in months. She mended clothes and organized supplies with quiet efficiency. The townspeople talked. She heard their whispers when she accompanied Clint to buy provisions. Shame, a white man living with that woman. Wonder what really goes on out there. No good comes from mixing. Clint heard them too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He paid for supplies and left without conversation. Back at the ranch, Esther found solace in bringing order to chaos. She transformed the kitchen into a place of warmth. She coaxed life back into the neglected vegetable garden. She even convinced a few chickens to start laying again. But she remained careful. When curiosity drove her to examine Clint's small collection of books, she waited until he rode out to check cattle. The medical texts made her heart race. She traced familiar diagrams with trembling fingers, remembering lessons learned in secret rooms back east. One evening, Clint caught her reading by candlelight. "Those aren't for you," he said sharply. She set the book down immediately. "I apologize, sir." "You can read?" "Some." He stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or suspicion. "Stick to cooking," he said finally. Winter deepened around them. The work grew harder as frozen pipes burst and livestock needed constant care. But the ranch began to show signs of life. Hot meals appeared on schedule. Clean clothes waited in neat piles. The house smelled of bread instead of decay. Clint began watching her with something beyond mere employer interest. He noticed how she hummed while working. He saw the way she spoke gently to frightened animals. He caught glimpses of intelligence in her careful questions about ranch operations. Then came the morning when two strangers rode through, asking questions at Miller's store. They described a colored woman with education. They offered money for information. The whispers reached the ranch by afternoon. Clint found Esther in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she kneaded bread. "Someone's asking about you in town." Her face went pale. The old fear returned to her eyes. "I'll leave if you want me to, sir." Clint studied her frightened expression. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest besides anger and grief. This woman had brought his dying ranch back to life. Now, danger hunted her like a wolf stalking wounded prey. The storm hit 3 days after the strangers left town. Wind howled across the prairie like a living thing, rattling windows and tearing at anything not nailed down. Clint fought through the blizzard to secure the barn doors when he heard thunder screaming. His prized stallion thrashed in his stall, blood streaming down his left flank. A broken board had torn through muscle and scraped bone. The gash ran 8 inches long and deep enough to see white beneath the red. Clint's heart sank. Thunder represented his future. The stallion's bloodline could save the ranch through breeding fees. Without him, bankruptcy loomed within months. "Easy, boy." Clint's hands shook as he examined the wound. The horse's eyes rolled white with pain and terror. Doc Peterson lived 20 miles away in good weather. In this storm, the journey was suicide. The nearest veterinarian was even farther. Thunder would bleed to death or die from infection long before help arrived. Esther appeared in the barn doorway, snow swirling around her like a ghost. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough." Clint's voice cracked. "Might have to put him down." She stepped closer, her eyes studying the injured animal with an intensity that surprised him. Thunder's breathing came in ragged gasps. Blood pooled in the straw beneath his hooves. "May I look?" Clint almost laughed. What could a cook possibly know about horse injuries? But desperation made him step aside. Esther approached Thunder with calm confidence. She spoke in low, soothing tones while examining the wound. Her hands moved with practiced precision, testing the edges of torn flesh and checking for foreign debris. "The muscle is damaged but intact," she said quietly. "Bone is scraped but not fractured. If we clean it properly and stitch the deeper layers, he should heal." Clint stared at her. "You know about this kind of injury?" "Some." She was already moving toward his medicine cabinet, searching through bottles and supplies. "Do you have carbolic acid, clean thread, a curved needle? How do you know what to look for?" She found the supplies she needed and arranged them with surgical precision. "I learned from a doctor back east. He treated animals when human patients were scarce." Thunder thrashed again, sending fresh blood across the stall. Time was running out. "Can you really help him?" "Yes." Something in her voice convinced him. Not hope exactly, but certainty born from experience. Clint had heard that tone before. in the army surgeon's tent during the war. It belonged to people who knew life and death intimately. What do you need me to do? Esther worked with the focused intensity of a trained physician. She cleaned the wound with carbolic acid while Clint held Thunder's head. The stallion fought against the burning pain, but her gentle voice kept him from complete panic. Hold him steady. This next part will hurt. She began stitching the deepest layers of muscle with precise, even sutures. Her technique was flawless, each stitch perfectly placed and tensioned. This wasn't luck or instinct. This was education. Where did you really learn this? Philadelphia. She didn't look up from her work. Dr. Samuel Richards ran a clinic near the docks. He believed healing belonged to anyone willing to learn. He taught you surgery? Everything he could. Anatomy, pharmacology, surgical techniques. Her hands never wavered as she worked. He said knowledge was the only thing they couldn't take away. Clint watched her close the wound layer by layer. Muscle, fascia, skin, each closure perfect and professional. She worked by candlelight in a freezing barn, but her concentration never faltered. You're a doctor. I was trained as one. But you're working as my cook. She finished the final sutures and bandaged the wound with clean cloth strips. Thunder's breathing had steadied. The bleeding had stopped completely. Colored women don't practice medicine in Montana Territory, she said simply, or most anywhere else. The truth hit him like a physical blow. This woman possessed skills that could save lives, yet she was reduced to hiding in his kitchen. The waste of it felt criminal. Why are you running? Fear flickered across her face. I helped the wrong people, made powerful enemies. The men asking questions in town, among others. Thunder nickered softly and nuzzled Esther's shoulder. The crisis had passed. The stallion would live, and with him, Clint's hopes for the ranch's survival. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what she had done. You should change the bandages daily. Watch for infection. Keep the wound clean and dry. She was back to being careful, deferential. The confident physician had vanished, replaced by the cautious cook who knew her place. Esther. He used her name for the first time. What you just did was impossible for someone with no training. I never said I had no training. Why didn't you tell me before? Would you have believed me? He considered that question honestly. 3 weeks ago, he would have laughed at the idea of a colored woman with medical education. Even now, the concept challenged everything he thought he knew about the world. But he had watched her work. He had seen her knowledge and skill firsthand. Thunder was alive because of abilities that seemed miraculous, but were actually the result of years of study and practice. I believe you now. Something shifted between them in that moment. The dynamic of employer and servant cracked, revealing glimpses of something deeper. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. Thunder stamped his feet and tossed his head, testing his injured leg. He would recover fully. The ranch would survive another season, and Clint, Montana, would never look at Esther Williams the same way again. Thunder recovered faster than anyone expected. Within a week, the stallion was walking without pain. The perfect sutures left minimal scarring. Word spread through Cedar Ridge about the miraculous healing at the Montana ranch. People began talking. Not the usual cruel gossip, but curious whispers about folk remedies and old-fashioned doctoring. Some remembered their grandmother's healing ways. Others wondered what secrets the isolated rancher might know. The crisis came on a Tuesday morning. Young Tommy Walsh collapsed during school, burning with fever and struggling to breathe. His mother Sarah carried him home in a panic while his father rode hard toward Peterson's place. Doc Peterson was delivering a baby 2 counties over. Nobody expected him back for days. Tommy's breathing grew more labored by the hour. His fever spiked beyond anything Sarah had seen before. By afternoon, desperation drove her to Miller's store. What about that rancher, Montana? She asked the gathered men. Word is he saved that stallion with some kind of healing knowledge. The men exchanged uncomfortable glances. Asking a rancher for medical help seemed foolish. But Tommy was dying, and Doc Peterson remained unreachable. "Couldn't hurt to ask," Miller said finally. 3 men rode out to the ranch as the sun touched the horizon. Clint met them at the gate with suspicion etched across his weathered face. "We need help," one said. "Tommy Walsh is dying. High fever, can't breathe proper. His ma is beside herself." Clint's stomach clenched. He had no medical training beyond basic battlefield first aid, but Esther did. The question was whether he could trust these men with her secret. "What makes you think I can help? Your horse recovered from that gash like nothing happened. Someone around here knows healing." Clint glanced toward the house where Esther waited in the shadows. She had heard every word. Her face was pale, but determined. "I'll come look," he said finally. "Can't promise anything." The Walsh house buzzed with frightened relatives and concerned neighbors. Tommy lay unconscious on his small bed, his skin burning to the touch. His breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps that spoke of fluid in his lungs. Clint examined the boy, while Esther's whispered instructions echoed in his memory from their hurried conversation on the ride over. She had described the symptoms and likely diagnosis: pneumonia. Without proper treatment, Tommy would die before morning. "It's lung fever," Clint announced with more confidence than he felt. "Seen it during the war. He needs specific treatment." Sarah Walsh grabbed his arm. "Can you help him?" "Maybe. I need to go back to the ranch for supplies. Keep him cool with wet cloths. Make sure he drinks water if he wakes up." The ride back felt endless. At the ranch, Esther had already prepared everything: willow bark for fever reduction, eucalyptus oil for breathing, a precise mixture of herbs that would help clear fluid from Tommy's lungs. "Tell them to prepare hot water with the eucalyptus oil," she instructed. "Have him breathe the steam every hour. The willow bark tea should be given in small doses every 3 hours. Watch for improvement in his breathing." "What if it doesn't work?" "It will work. I've treated dozens of cases like this." Clint returned to town carrying hope in carefully labeled bottles. Under Esther's long-distance guidance, he supervised Tommy's treatment through the night. The boy's fever broke near dawn. His breathing cleared by afternoon. By evening, Tommy was sitting up and asking for food. The crisis had passed completely. The town buzzed with amazement. Clint, Montana had saved the Walsh boy using mysterious knowledge and strange remedies. People spoke of miracles and hidden wisdom. More requests followed. Mrs. Henderson's broken wrist that wasn't healing properly. Old man Parker's infected wound from a farming accident. Mary Sullivan's difficult pregnancy that worried everyone. Each case required careful coordination between Clint and Esther. She diagnosed and prescribed from the shadows while he played the role of folk healer. They developed coded conversations and subtle signals that allowed them to work together seamlessly. The system worked perfectly until Sheriff Briggs started asking questions. "Mighty strange how you suddenly became the town doctor," Briggs said during one of his visits to the ranch. "Where'd you learn all this healing knowledge?" "Army experience, old family remedies. Army medics don't usually know about difficult births and children's fevers." Clint kept his expression neutral. "A man picks up knowledge where he can find it." Briggs studied him with calculating eyes. The sheriff was ambitious and suspicious by nature. Success stories made him uncomfortable, especially when they involved people he couldn't control. "Just seems convenient is all." "Your cook arrives, and suddenly you're performing medical miracles. She's got nothing to do with it." "Maybe. Maybe not." The conversation left Clint uneasy. That evening he found Esther in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she prepared dinner. "We need to be more careful," he said. "Briggs is suspicious." "I know. I've been thinking we should stop. People need help. Tommy would have died without you. And we'll both die if they discover the truth." They stood in silence, the weight of impossible choices settling between them. Every life they saved increased their danger. Every person they refused to help meant someone might suffer needlessly. "What do you want to do?" Clint asked. Esther looked toward the window where the lights of Cedar Ridge twinkled in the distance. Somewhere in that town, People lived and died based on the availability of medical care. She possessed knowledge that could save them, but using it risked everything. "I became a doctor to help people," she said finally. "That hasn't changed." "Then we keep going." Together? Together. The partnership that had begun with a dying horse had evolved into something neither of them had expected. Trust had grown into respect. Respect had deepened into something that felt dangerously close to love. But danger circled them like wolves in the darkness. Sheriff Briggs watched and waited. Somewhere beyond the horizon, other hunters continued their relentless search. The question was no longer whether their secret would be discovered, but when and whether they would be ready for the consequences. Their secret practice flourished through spring and into summer. Word spread carefully among families who had witnessed the miraculous healings: a broken leg that set perfectly, a breech birth that ended safely, a case of blood poisoning that cleared without amputation. Each success bound the community tighter to their unusual arrangement. Clint became the public face of healing, while Esther remained the hidden mind behind every treatment. They developed an intricate system of communication that looked like casual conversation to outsiders. "That mare seems restless," Clint might say after examining a patient. "Feed her willow bark and keep her calm," Esther would reply, knowing he meant the patient needed pain relief and rest. The ranch prospered along with their medical work. Thunder's recovery had brought breeding contracts from neighboring counties. The house gleamed with fresh paint and new furnishings. For the first time in years, hope replaced despair in the daily routine, but success carried its own dangers. Sheriff Briggs visited more frequently, his questions growing sharper. He studied Esther with calculating eyes during his inspections, searching for evidence of the education everyone denied she possessed. "Mighty clean kitchen for a simple cook," he observed during one visit. "I take pride in my work," Esther replied carefully. "I bet you do. Bet you take pride in lots of things." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Briggs suspected the truth but lacked proof. He prowled around their secret like a predator testing for weakness. Meanwhile, strangers continued passing through town, men who asked questions about educated colored women. Men who offered generous rewards for information. Each inquiry sent fresh waves of fear through Esther's careful composure. The truth about her past emerged slowly during long evenings when exhaustion loosened her guard. She had been born free in Philadelphia to parents who valued education above everything else. The Quaker school had taught her reading, writing, and basic sciences. Dr. Samuel Richards had seen her potential and risked his reputation to train her properly. He believed healing belonged to anyone with the calling, she told Clint one night as they sat on the porch watching stars emerge. Color and gender meant nothing to broken bones and fevered children. "How long did you train with him?" 5 years. I learned everything he could teach. Surgery, pharmacology, obstetrics, pediatric care." Her voice carried pride mixed with sorrow. "I was good at it. Really good. What happened? The war came. Union soldiers needed medical care, and Dr. Richards was known to be an abolitionist. We treated wounded men regardless of their politics. But someone reported us to Confederate sympathizers. The story unfolded piece by piece. Night raids on the clinic, threats against Dr. Richards and his family, the final attack that forced Esther to flee Philadelphia with nothing but medical knowledge and determination to survive. "They burned the clinic," she said quietly. "Dr. Richards died trying to save his medical books." Clint's own history felt simple by comparison. He had lost his wife and infant daughter to influenza 3 years earlier. No doctor had been available during their final hours. He had watched them die knowing that proper medical care might have saved them. "I blamed myself for their deaths," he admitted. "If I had been smarter, richer, more connected, maybe I could have found help. Medicine can't save everyone, but it can save some, like Tommy Walsh, like all the others you've helped through me." Their shared purpose had created something neither expected. Partnership had deepened into affection. Affection had grown into love, neither dared speak aloud. The transformation showed in small gestures. Clint brought her coffee each morning and stayed to discuss the day's plans. Esther mended his shirts with extra care and saved the choicest portions of dinner for his plate. They worked together with increasing synchronization, anticipating each other's needs and thoughts. But the outside world intruded with increasing frequency. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a tired-looking man who claimed to be a traveling preacher. He was elderly, with graying hair and gentle eyes that seemed to see everything. His clothes were worn but clean. His manner suggested education and refinement. "I'm looking for the Montana ranch," he told Miller at the general store. "Heard they might need spiritual guidance." The man introduced himself as Marcus Freeman to the townspeople, but his real purpose became clear when he appeared at the ranch that evening. Esther took one look at him and burst into tears. "Doc Freeman!" The old man embraced her like a father, welcoming home a lost daughter. Clint watched the reunion with growing understanding. This was no coincidence. "I've been searching for you for 2 years," Freeman said, "following rumors and whispers across 3 territories. How did you find me?" "Stories of miraculous healings have a way of traveling. A stallion saved from certain death, a dying child restored to health, medical knowledge appearing where none should exist." His eyes twinkled with pride and sorrow. "You always did excellent work, my dear." Freeman had been Dr. Richard's closest friend and partner in training Esther. After the clinic's destruction, he had taken over her education in secret, moving from town to town to avoid detection. When she fled Philadelphia, he had spent years trying to track her movements. "I have news," he said gravely. "Good and bad." The good news was opportunity. California had communities where educated colored people could practice medicine openly. Freeman had connections there, people who would welcome Esther's skills and protect her identity. The bad news was immediate danger. "Thomas Whitmore is 3 days behind me," Freeman said. "He has legal documents claiming ownership and sheriff's support in 2 counties. This time, he won't give up easily." The name struck Esther like a physical blow. Whitmore represented everything evil about her past. He had pursued her across multiple states, claiming she belonged to him based on forged papers and corrupt officials. "You have to leave," Freeman continued. "Tonight, if possible." Clint felt his world cracking apart. Just when happiness seemed possible, forces beyond their control threatened to destroy everything they had built together. The choice loomed stark and terrible. Safety meant abandoning their life together. Staying meant facing enemies who would show no mercy. Esther stared at Freeman in horror. "Whitmore should have given up by now. It's been 3 years. He's convinced you stole valuable medical equipment when you fled. Claims you're his property trained at his expense." Freeman's voice carried bitter anger. "He's made it personal." Clint stepped forward. "What kind of legal documents?" "Forged ownership papers. Bills of sale that never existed. He's corrupted sheriffs in multiple counties with promises of reward money." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the mantel clock. Outside, night sounds carried across the prairie. Normal sounds of a normal evening that felt anything but normal now. "How long do we have?" Clint asked. 2 days, maybe 3. "He's traveling with Sheriff Briggs now." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Briggs had been building a case against them for months. His suspicious questions and calculating stares suddenly made perfect sense. "Briggs has been watching us," Esther whispered. "He knows about the medical treatments." "Which gives Whitmore exactly the proof he needs," Freeman said grimly. "A colored woman performing medicine fits his story perfectly." Clint's mind raced through possibilities. Fighting was hopeless against legal authority, even corrupt authority. Running meant abandoning everything they had built. Staying meant certain capture. "There's another option," Freeman said carefully. "I have contacts in California. People who would welcome Esther's skills and protect her identity. We could leave tonight." "What about Clint?" Esther asked. "He'd be safe here. Whitmore has no interest in him." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Everything they had built together would be destroyed. Their partnership, their growing love, their shared purpose. All of it would end. I won't leave him, Esther said firmly. Then you'll both be destroyed. Clint watched emotions war across Esther's face. Fear battled with determination. Love fought against practical survival. He had never seen her look so vulnerable or so strong. Maybe there's another way, he said slowly. What do you mean? Whitmore's documents are forgeries. What if we could prove that? Freeman shook his head. Corrupt sheriffs don't care about proof. They care about money. But honest people do. The townspeople who've benefited from Esther's healing, they don't know she's the one providing medical care. Then maybe it's time they learned the truth. The idea was desperate and dangerous. Revealing Esther's secret would expose her to exactly the kind of scrutiny they had spent months avoiding. But it might also provide protection Whitmore couldn't overcome. Community support, Clint continued, thinking aloud. If enough people know what she's really done for them, they might stand with her. Or they might turn her over to save themselves trouble, Freeman warned. They spent the night planning desperately. Freeman revealed crucial information he had been saving. Esther's birth certificate and education documents were authentic and legally binding. Dr. Richards had hidden copies with trusted friends before the clinic's destruction. She was born free in Philadelphia, Freeman explained. Educated at recognized institutions, trained by licensed physicians. Whitmore's ownership claims are completely fraudulent. Can you prove that? Freeman patted a leather satchel. I've been carrying the evidence for 2 years. Dawn brought no relief from their desperate situation. Riders appeared on the horizon as the sun climbed higher. Sheriff Briggs led the group, with Whitmore beside him and 2 deputies trailing behind. Thomas Whitmore looked exactly like the nightmare Esther had described. Tall, thin, with cold eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they saw. His expensive clothes and confident bearing spoke of wealth and influence. Montana, Briggs called out as they approached the house. We need to talk. Clint stepped onto the porch with Esther behind him. Freeman remained inside, hidden but listening. This is Thomas Whitmore from Georgia, Briggs announced. He's tracking stolen property. A colored woman with medical training who belongs to him. I don't know anything about that. Whitmore studied Esther with predatory satisfaction. That's her. I'd recognize her anywhere. She stole valuable medical equipment and ran away from my plantation 3 years ago. She's a free woman working as my cook. She's my property, trained at considerable expense. I have legal documents proving ownership. Briggs produced official-looking papers with impressive seals and signatures. These documents give Mr. Whitmore legal right to reclaim his property. The trap was springing exactly as they had feared. Corrupt law enforcement backed by forged documents. Public opinion would mean nothing against official authority. I'll need to take her into custody pending resolution, Briggs continued. The preacher, too, for harboring stolen property. Freeman stepped onto the porch with quiet dignity. I am Dr. Marcus Freeman, formerly of Philadelphia. This woman is Dr. Esther Williams, born free and educated at legitimate institutions. Whitmore laughed harshly. Colored women aren't doctors. She's plantation property trained to assist white physicians. I have documentation proving otherwise. Your documentation is irrelevant. My papers have legal authority in this territory. The deputies moved to flank the porch. Resistance would bring violence they couldn't win. Esther's face had gone pale but determined. She would not beg or plead. This is wrong, Clint said desperately. This is law, Briggs replied. Step aside. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Justice faced corruption. Truth confronted power. Love stood helpless against legal authority. Then Tommy Walsh's voice called from beyond the yard. Sheriff Briggs, what's happening here? The boy's parents appeared with other townspeople trailing behind. Word had spread quickly about the confrontation at the Montana ranch. Curious neighbors had come to witness whatever drama was unfolding. Sarah Walsh stepped forward with maternal authority. Is there trouble with Esther? She saved my boy's life when Doc Peterson couldn't get here. More voices joined the growing crowd. People whose lives had been touched by the secret medical practice. Their presence changed everything about the confrontation's dynamics. Whitmore's confident expression faltered slightly. He had expected to conduct business quietly, without witnesses or complications. The real battle was about to begin. The crowd grew larger as word spread through Cedar Ridge. Families who had benefited from the mysterious healing at Montana's ranch gathered in the yard. Their faces showed confusion and growing concern. "What's this about Esther saving lives?" asked Mary Sullivan, whose difficult pregnancy had ended safely thanks to secret guidance. "She's just a cook," Briggs said quickly. "Mr. Whitmore is here to reclaim stolen property." "Property?" Sarah Walsh's voice rose with indignation. "This woman helped birth my neighbor's baby when the midwife couldn't come." Old Man Parker pushed through the crowd, his previously infected arm now healed completely. "She treated my wound when gangrene was setting in. Saved my limb, maybe my life." Whitmore's confidence cracked slightly. "These people are confused. The woman may have assisted with folk remedies, but she belongs to me." Freeman stepped forward with quiet authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Dr. Esther Williams. She has been providing medical care to your community through Mr. Montana for the past 6 months." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. The revelation reframed everything they thought they knew about their recent miraculous recoveries. "That's impossible," Briggs protested. "Colored women can't be doctors." "This colored woman saved my son's life," Sarah Walsh declared firmly. "I don't care what papers you're waving around." Freeman opened his leather satchel and withdrew official documents: birth certificate from Philadelphia, educational records from the Quaker school, training certificates signed by licensed physicians. "Dr. Williams was born free and educated legitimately," he announced to the growing crowd. "These ownership documents are fraudulent." Whitmore snatched the papers and studied them desperately. His face went pale as he recognized authentic seals and signatures he couldn't dispute. "Forgeries," he said weakly. "Elaborate forgeries." "Then let's examine both sets of documents," suggested Miller from the general store. "I've seen enough legal papers to spot the real ones." The crowd pressed closer as Miller compared Whitmore's ownership documents with Freeman's authentic records. The differences were obvious once pointed out: inconsistent seals, forged signatures, dates that didn't align with historical facts. "These ownership papers are fake," Miller announced, "made to look official but full of errors." Briggs realized his position was collapsing. "Doesn't matter. I have authority to make arrests based on legitimate complaints." "From a man using forged documents?" Tommy Walsh's father stepped forward. "That makes you part of the fraud." More testimonials poured forth as people overcame their initial shock. Mrs. Henderson described her perfectly healed wrist. The Baker family told of fever treatments that saved their twin daughters. Story after story of medical interventions that had seemed miraculous, but were actually the work of a trained physician. "She diagnosed pneumonia in my boy when everyone else thought it was simple cold," Sarah Walsh said. "Without her knowledge, Tommy would have died." "She set my broken leg so well I can work again," added another voice. "She delivered my baby when complications nearly killed us both." Each testimony strengthened the community's understanding of what had really been happening. Their mysterious healings hadn't been luck or folk wisdom. They had been receiving professional medical care from someone with genuine expertise. Whitmore grew desperate as his legal position crumbled. "She stole medical equipment from my plantation. That's theft, regardless of her status." "What medical equipment?" Freeman challenged. "Be specific." "Surgical instruments, medications, training materials. All of which I provided from my own supplies," Freeman replied calmly. "Dr. Williams fled your plantation with nothing but the clothes on her back." "Prove it." Freeman smiled grimly and produced receipts and inventory records. Everything was documented meticulously: purchase dates, supplier names, shipping records. The evidence painted a clear picture of legitimate medical practice rather than theft. "You have no claim on Dr. Williams or her possessions," Freeman concluded. "Your documents are forgeries, and your accusations are lies." The crowd's mood shifted from confusion to anger. They had been deceived by corrupt officials trying to destroy someone who had helped their families. The injustice was obvious and infuriating. "Sheriff Briggs," Miller said formally, You've been deceived by fraudulent documents. I suggest you arrest the man who brought them." Briggs looked around desperately. His deputies were outnumbered 20-1 by angry townspeople. His legal authority meant nothing without community support. "This is irregular," he protested weakly. "So is trying to kidnap a free citizen," Sarah Walsh replied sharply. Whitmore backed toward his horse, realizing the situation had turned completely against him. "This isn't over. I have connections in other counties." "Then you can use those connections from jail," Freeman said. "Attempting to enslave a free person is a federal crime." The deputies looked at each other uncertainly. They had signed on for simple prisoner transport, not kidnapping and fraud. One of them stepped away from Briggs and removed his badge. "I won't be part of this," he said. "The woman's papers are legitimate." The second deputy followed suit, leaving Briggs isolated and powerless. Whitmore mounted his horse and spurred away without another word, abandoning his corrupt ally to face community justice alone. "Sheriff Briggs," Miller announced formally, "you're under citizen's arrest for conspiracy and attempted kidnapping." Freeman embraced Esther as tears of relief streamed down her face. 3 years of running and hiding had finally ended. She was free to practice medicine openly, protected by community support and legal recognition. Clint stepped beside her and took her hand. "Dr. Williams," he said with a smile, "I believe you have patients waiting." She looked around at the faces of people she had helped in secret. They smiled back with gratitude and acceptance, ready to support the physician who had already saved so many lives. "Yes," she said quietly, "I believe I do." The sign went up the following week. Dr. Esther Williams, physician. Below it, in smaller letters, Clint, Montana, practice manager. The woman who had arrived as a desperate cook had found her true calling at last. The man who had hired her for kitchen work had discovered love and purpose beyond anything he had imagined. Together, they would heal not just bodies, but the prejudices of an entire community willing to grow and change.